are people working on it? And I can tell you, when I speak in conferences, people go, yes, we are working on things. And just knowing, just raising these questions of understanding human physiology can be happening in other ways. What are those other ways? And that's where innovation needs to happen. In quick summary, we at FDA are very excited in participating in any way to create a better healthcare system. And at the same time, when I say through evidence-based and safe innovation, is really innovation should happen in a safe way that keeps patients in mind. At the same time, we need to create the knowledge and evidence that's happening in small pockets, and sort of, can we bring that together? Can we have patient safety and protected patients' information as a cornerstone of healthcare? We all need to work together. We need to reach all patients, and with the goal of better treatments and outcomes. And really, that's really what my goal is in terms of helping and influencing not only within the agency and the leadership that's committed towards this, is to, one, working together collaboratively, reaching our patients, and then can we drive to better treatments and outcomes. I'm going to pause here and see whether folks have questions, and maybe we can turn this into a dialogue more than me just talking. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm really excited with all the work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Bakul. I will open this to questions, till you have time. I think people would love to speak with you. Yeah, if there are questions, please.
So I have a question. My name is Tanya Spisbar. I'm from the Australian government. Given you're from the United States, I thought it was a good opportunity to bring up the legal aspects of software as a medical device. The US being, I guess, one of the more litigious jurisdictions in the world. I'm just wondering, we've been talking today about decision assisting technology. Sorry, are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Hello?
So I'm not hearing any questions, Raj. Was there a question? I heard some very faint sound.
Yeah, there are questions, Bakul. I think we'll get people around the dais to. Can you hear me now? Hello?
I can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. So I'll get people on the dais to ask you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your presentation. My name's Tanya Spisbar. I'm from the Australian government, but based here in India. I was interested to ask you, being from the United States and it being quite a litigious jurisdiction, the legal aspects that I guess are covered off in the risk framework as well, when we deal with things such as software as a medical device. The reason I ask this question is, for example, when you are using decision-assisted technology to determine in a remote location whether a drug should be administered to a patient, if for some reason it does not work out, I'm just wondering to what level are we thinking through whether or not the device itself might in one instance give misinformation? What if it works but leads to a negative result of increasing suffering, permanent injury or death to the patient? And who bears the risk? Is it the manufacturer, the designer or the administrator? I guess these types of legal questions would have already arisen with things like automated defibrillators, but as we're starting to look at non-doctors administering drugs to patients in remote areas using software as the analytical tool, I'm just wondering what type of legal implications there are and how they're being thought through in the FDA. Thank you.
I didn't get all of that, but let me try to repeat what you're asking. Are you asking the risk management systems that exist today and what happens when remotely when folks try to administer something that could be very problematic, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not only a legal question, but it's also more of an ethical question and a safety question that you're asking. I think that's why technologies, I think one of the things we're doing as software as a medical device is getting everybody who is building technologies to focus on patients itself and patient safety itself. So if we can, as regulators, think about what's required to those things, we can set standards. Can we look at how these products are made as opposed to what these products are doing? And if somebody's giving information, and if we know that information is coming from a credible source, I think that lays the standards. That does not necessarily mean it needs to be regulated. It needs to be transparent for the people using it and people delivering it. I think that's really going to be the key. We haven't figured out everything about how we would want to oversee those risks, but I think those risks happen today regardless. The question is really coming down to is where is the benefit of, and can we change the benefit line and balance it with the risk paradigm? Can we come up with a starting point to say that there's always a benefit, there's always a risk, but are we changing what is happening what is happening today? And that's really where it comes down to is, as we look at any of these policies, any of these approaches across the world, we have to take into account what is happening today. And we need to look at the solution that's provided. If it is better today, it's better than what we have today, then we have an obligation to, one, enhance that access to information. Two, is make sure that that access to information is done in a very responsible way. And I said, I'm saying a lot of stuff that is sort of already written in risk management, already written in other places, like 14971 and regulations, etc. But at the same time, it's not solely on a regulator that helps assure this risk. It's also the practitioner, the creator of this technology. So we want not everybody creating technologies, not everybody practicing, but we want good practitioners, good creators of technologies that will also enhance healthcare. So that's really what it comes down to.
Thank you. Gupta ji.
Bakul, another question for you.
Hi, my name is Anant Sengupta. I'm with a company called Track My Beat Healthcare. One of the products that we have is kind of picks up medical data, then applies the clinical protocols and throws up alerts. And this is combined with video link so that this can be a home healthcare solution. Okay, so a home healthcare company will have nurses who typically go out to look at the patients and see how they're doing. But combined with that, they could also do it remotely partly, and then as required, they will visit the home. Now this software, as I said, applying medical protocols will throw up health alerts. So the question is this something that will come under the FDA purview, and what part will be under FDA purview?
Yeah, so if you look at some of the policies we have put in place, and I'm not saying your product is good or bad, I'm just saying that from a regulatory perspective, it's an area where we would say, having a remote conversation like we are having right now is not something that that FDA would want to regulate, one. Two is, as these technologies are enhancing so quickly, and we know we can get high definition video right now when we talk to each other across the world, those communication technologies and then information that's available, and to the previous question, if that information that you're sharing comes from a very legitimate source, and you are being very responsible, I think that's something that manufacturers or people like you should be thinking about, is how you get that information. Are you getting it from a credible source? Are you keeping it current? When you do all those things, then you are creating a safer solution. And we as a regulatory agency would not want to be in checking up on those things, because we expect people to start doing good things, and it's no longer that a regulation will hinder in that process, but also actually be helping you thinking in those terms. At the same time, if you're now automatically diagnosing something, that's something that we would continue to regulate. But at the same time, if you're just having a nurse calling in to a patient's home or bringing in information from a repository that practice guidelines have written, then that's information that might as well be carried on a paper. Now it's carried on electronically, and that's not something we would focus on.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Patel. It's Akshay here. So I have a couple of questions in particular. One was, is there any cross-border differences between US FDA and other FDAs when it comes to mobile medical devices? And second question is that if my clinical management system, information management system has provisions for clinical trials, phase 2, phase 3, etc., are there any specific rules set that are designed for sharing this kind of information? Because that includes a personal consent sharing as well, which would be video as well as audio.
Yeah, so I think you asked me 2 questions, or maybe more than 2 questions. The first question was, are there any differences between what US FDA is doing and other FDAs around the world on mobile medical apps? I recently, actually just a couple days ago, I saw UK MHRA put out some guidance. Actually, not MHRA, I'm sorry. The Academy of Physicians have put out a guidance that used the principles of the guidance that I talked about from the US FDA, and use those principles to sort of clarify what doctors should be doing. And I've seen other countries started to adopt some of the thinking that is in the mobile medical apps guidance that we put out. So I'm not sure where everybody across the world is there yet in providing that clarity. But one thing I can say is the discussion we have in the particular guidance document on mobile medical apps from US FDA has actually started to influence other FDAs and other regulatory agencies to start taking those pragmatic approaches. So that's one thing. The second question you asked about use of technology in clinical trials, for that matter. I can tell you, I think about the problem slightly differently. When I say technology used in clinical trials is no different than a notebook used in clinical trial, or a phone used in clinical trial, or a visit to a clinical facility in a clinical trial. That clinical trial, either it's for a drug or a device, needs to take into account the study itself. And the goal of the trial is to make sure that the product that's being investigated the study will actually support the effectiveness or the efficacy of that product. And really, at that point, technology in a clinical trial becomes a tool. If you think about it from that perspective, and as in any trial or any information that you're gathering, those informations, one, has to be protected for patient privacy, and 2, has to really contribute to the endpoint that you're looking for as a part of the trial. So I would think about it slightly differently as opposed to, is it regulated or not?
Bakul, thanks so much. Very interesting presentations and taking our questions and clearing our doubts and enlightening us. We really appreciate your time on early morning. And thank you on behalf of the organizers and the attendees. Thank you so much. We'll connect offline with you.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. So thank you everyone for joining us on this weekend and interacting both the sides, the government officials with the private sector and private sectors with the government. It helps each one of us to understand what we are doing and also probably chart ways to work together. Thank you everyone.